Yo.
Do you know what's really annoying?
What?
Recording a podcast and then an hour later, Fernando Alonso announced to go to Aston Martin on a multi-year contract.
Are you joking me?
Which means not only is the podcast episode not released, it's immediately out of date, but more importantly, and what now is the new opening to this podcast, which is this phone call, which I'm recording, FYI, Oscar
really?
Piastri is just going to be announced to Alpine. What are your whole thoughts?
Oh, dude. Good. Alonso's a dickhead. You know what? I love Alonso, but seriously, that guy, he makes the worst decisions every time. Every move he makes, when he leaves, that team gets better. You know what's going to happen? Good riddance, mate. That's good for us as Australian fans. Oscar Piastri is walking into a seat that is almost 100% guaranteed by fate because of Fernando Alonso's leaving, that they will be a world championship driving team in the next 2 or 3 years.
You heard it here first. Well, welcome to another episode of Lakeside Drive. In this immediately out of date but pre-recorded prior to this phone call episode, we're going to review with Campy in person, not just on a phone call, and Freya, the Hungarian Grand Prix. And I'm joined by my friends and yours in person, Thomas J. Camp. G'day, mate.
How are you, Freya? How you going?
And
Sorry, mate.
Thanks, mate. And Freya. Hello, Freya.
Hello.
First day on the job, Campy.
Whatever.
Yeah. Everyone, that's it. That's the Formula One season done. There is absolutely no point watching the rest of it. We've had a full season in this point anyway.
13 races.
Yeah, I don't think there's any point watching it, not with Ferrari strategy like that. Sebastian Vettel's retired. What's the point? What's the point anymore?
Why go
They
on?
are still not doing good things. The only point is really waiting to see where Oscar Piastri goes to. But anyway, let's talk a little bit about Seb Vettel first, guys. Freya, let's start with you. What's he going to be remembered for from your point?
Not this year, that's for sure. I think when we think about Seb Vettel, it's not the most recent years. It's his time with Red Bull, and thereafter, he's proven himself to be a phenomenal racer. I think what has been most interesting with him in terms of reflecting on that is just how much our experience with him as a racer has changed. You know, there's very few of us sitting here now who I think if you'd asked us in, kind of 4 years ago, by the way, are you Seb Vettel fans in the future? We'd say absolutely not. So I think it's interesting to just see how much your views and experiences of a driver can change over time. But I think what's really interesting with him, and you can see the beginning of it with some other drivers who have been around for a while, is that he's leaving a lot more with the sport, which is his beliefs and values and things that he's working really hard to achieve. So it's not just the on-track stuff that he will kind of leave a legacy with, but he's been an interesting cat to be watching, that's for sure.
Seb Vettel was absolutely hated by everyone in Australia for so many years, Campy, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Put in the bin for ages. I remember you've got a great story of a certain Grand Prix and a certain Australian are qualifying in.
It was 2014.
Yeah.
So it was the first year of the turbo hybrid. I think I've shared this story before.
Yeah.
First race, 2014.
It's not like you to repeat
It's
yourself.
Seb Vettel and Danny Rick, I think. Seb, in qualifying, didn't make it out of Q2. And Danny Rick went to put it on the front row, I believe, in that race. But in the Q2 moment, when he didn't make it through, the whole crowd went up in this unanimous cheer of like the big finger to Seb Vettel and the whole of Germany because of the tough times we put up with for 4 years of him and Mark Webber. And the camera just panned to Christian Horner, and even he had a big smile on his face. He saw the irony in it. So, look, I was part of that crew. I hated the whole of Germany for that 4 years just because of the rivalry that he had with Mark Webber. And since then, Seb for me has grown into someone, a steward of our sport that has left the sport better than what he came into it. His reputation around all the teams has grown. Yes, we used to talk about Seb with some childlike. I think to Baku when he ran into Hamilton and after he got brake tested, just those moments of childlike brain fades. But think in the last few years become a real stalwart of the sport. So
Yeah.
and he does great things for it. I think his driving this year. I think he's probably retiring because he knows he's not going to get into another top quality car. He probably doesn't want to prolong his career a bit like a Kimi Räikkönen or a Fernando Alonso who are trying to get one more world championship. I think he sees the writing on the wall and he's getting out early.
4 championships though, mate, is huge. Like a huge number. We forget about that, don't we? Just how many it is.
We forget about how young that guy was when he burst onto the scene in 2008.
Yep.
Got his first win in 2000. Got his first win with Toro Rosso actually in 08. Then went in 09, went to the big Red Bull team with Mark Webber, and they both got some wins that year. And then 2010 through to 2013 was he got lucky, in my opinion, in 2010. But after that, he had the confidence and the way he drove some of those races from the front on the first lap. I mean, Mark Webber talks about how he made that double diffuser work and just absolutely get things out of the car that Mark could never do. It's a bit of weight distribution in there. He's always 12 kilos more. But in saying that, incredible driver had his time in Red Bull, and he's probably still better than Max Verstappen in that Red Bull. I think as Verstappen's career goes on, I think Verstappen will surpass him. But once in a generation driver, really, we don't see that a lot. So.
No, you're right. And I mean, still the youngest ever world drivers champion.
Yeah.
As you say, incredible career. The fact that he joined in BMW Sauber, went to Toro Rosso, took that win in epic style for them.
Yep.
And this is a team that was flailing around down the back consistently. Only he and Freya, additionally, other great Red Bull driver Pierre Gasly have managed to win in a Toro Rosso at the same event.
Noted.
Home race. How good's Pierre Gasly? But it is. But for Seb Vettel, though, I think, what an absolute legend. Yeah, he had some cool moments, and my favourite moment, Ferrari, I think it was 2019 Canadian Grand Prix, and him moving the number 1 and number 2 boards between his car and Lewis Hamilton's car.
Yeah, that was going to be. I wasn't sure if you were going to ask me. I wasn't sure if you were going to ask me the question of do I have a specific memory of him? And that was actually going to be my answer. It's just he's got a sass that we see from so few drivers that I just have so much appreciation for. And I think what's really interesting in terms of just the timing of his retirement as well is that to Campy's point, if he was still felt like he was in a position to be chasing something real, we might have seen him stick around for even another year. But I think it potentially says a lot about his current environment as well, in that it's not worth sticking around for. And when the weight of the other opportunities start to come up there, you go, no, it's not worth it. Whereas even if you have someone like an Alonso who might be thinking something similar, there's enough there for him to really hold on to, and that he feels like it's worth fighting for. So I think that says a lot about his surroundings as well.
Yeah, he backed himself when he went to when he went to Ferrari too. His idol, Michael Schumacher, he wanted to recreate that. Unfortunately, some of the drives he had in that Ferrari were, I think he got 10 wins for them. Some of them were outstanding drives in a car that was never a world championship winning car. Ferrari sort of had it halfway to the season, halfway point, but then after that they just dropped off and made some mistakes. And but he had some phenomenal drives, and I think his legacy is well cemented for the future of this sport, and we'll see him around as a pundit probably.
Hope so.
In many years to come, giving back. And for me, I started watching Formula One in that 2008, 2009, 2010 era.
Yep.
So we've seen this guy grow up
from
a young kid coming through, full of energy and attitude and everything that comes with it, to an elder statesman. It's been marvellous to watch, so thank you, Seb Vettel.
Yes, thank you, Seb. Elder statesman, I think he's like 35, 36. But I still think that's the interesting conversation that we constantly have in Formula One, is this age thing of he's too old, he's moving on. Lewis Hamilton, as I heard probably 17,000 times too many times over the course of the race weekend, how old exactly to the day Fernando Alonso was, 41 and 1 day old, 41 and 2 days old. But here he is, a guy who is 41 and 3 days old at this point when we're recording the podcast, still smashing it. So age doesn't really come into it, as we've seen with Kimi Räikkönen as well. But certainly, as you've both said, his prospects going forward in that Aston Martin team just aren't a thing. And I think he's now at a point where he's still young enough to have a great second career in television punditry. a pundit we'd actually listen to. If you'd like to go to on Sky Sports UK, that'd be great. He'll probably end up on Sky Sports Germany, which would be great. And I'm, to be honest, would rather listen to him in German than listen to anyone else, including Johnny Herbert, in English. Okay, let's go to...
It's pretty good motivation to learn German.
Go, exactly right. Let's go to a brand new segment here on the show. It's CampyBot's Discord comment of the race. And it happened when one Daniel Ricciardo went around the outside, or the inside, I should say, of two Alpines. And Katie17 says, well, she said, I haven't cheered so hard since Monza. And that's just facts. That's just hardcore real-time facts from that. So that's our Discord comment of the week. If you're not yet part of our Discord community, what are you doing? Left. You can find the link in the description below to join, either if you're watching on YouTube or listening on your audio platform of choice. It is honestly a whole bunch of fun. Campy sometimes comes across. And actually one point, I will say on the Seb Vettel thing, hasn't been on social media. Creates an Instagram account to announce his retirement. So everyone just be aware, if you ever see Campy created a social media account, you know he's retiring from the podcast, okay? So that's my combat indicator of that happening. Freya, let's talk a little bit about the television side of things, shall we? How did you see it on your side of the world?
I mean, if you are a Red Bull supporter, Ferrari supporter, Mercedes supporter, you would have had a great time this weekend. And if you go for anybody else, then best of luck. I had a very frustrating experience when it came to watching this weekend. I mean, qualifying's qualifying for the most part. It's fine. There's not really that much they can do with it. It's fine. But when it came to the race, it was just, you'd see something happen on track and, no need to see that. That looks interesting enough. Let's quickly look somewhere else where nothing is happening. I feel like it hasn't actually been that bad for a little while. Like we've been, for the most part, pretty all right with the broadcast, but this weekend it was really, really noticeable. Obviously, the first time I noticed it was really with K-Mag and Ricciardo, and K-Mag quickly had to pit afterwards. But that was looking really fun, and then we just went straight back to what was happening in kind of top three, which was nothing at that point in time. And that was really frustrating to watch. So I'm afraid I'm a pretty harsh critic this weekend.
Yeah, I think we all are. You're right, though, in terms of it's been pretty okay to the point where Tommy T really hasn't had anything to talk about. So that's why that segment has died a little bit, because it's sort of like, well, we keep saying the same thing week in and week out. Shut up, Johnny Herbert, and that's pretty much it.
Yep.
No one's really sort of made any massive errors in terms of TV director-wise, but you're right, this weekend was shocking to see how many cutaways. I was surprised we didn't go to a highlight of Lance Stroll in Monaco from last year.
Underwhelming anthem. Geez, there's a few interesting costume choices holding the flag too.
Really? I didn't even bother watching it.
Wow. Anyway, moving on.
Interesting out of 10 is the choice.
Whatever out of 10.
Whatever out of 10. It's my favourite score from you ever.
The chick was... Last week
Here we go.
That
hang on. Sorry, this is
green.
our other new section. Yeah. Campy's fashion advice specifically to do with people singing the national anthem. Yes, go on.
Last week we had the woman in the green. This week we had the lady in red, and it looked like it was going to fly off into oblivion. Put some clothes on, woman. It was freezing out there.
So we've had red, green. What's your prediction for the Belgian Grand Prix in a couple of weeks' time? What colour are the performers going to be wearing?
Oh, look, no idea. I just want to see a flyover. That'd be great.
Okay, well, you're not going to get one. Let's do a little bit of housekeeping before we go into talking about your bin, Campy. Have a bit of a think of who is in your bin from this week. Firstly, I want to say a massive thank you to you if you've reached out from our shout out last week about video editors. We've had a couple of you get in touch, which is awesome. Very excited to be working with Quinn in West Australia. We're going to put some cool content together there, and hopefully in a couple of weeks you'll see that over on our YouTube channel. So please make sure you're subscribed to our channel over there. As I mentioned, we're going on a break for a couple of weeks after this episode. We will be back, though, on the 23rd of August, which is a Tuesday morning here in Australia, and that will be our regular time slot going forward. So Tuesday morning will be that. Freya's free practice Friday. I knew I'd stuff it up at some point. Will be on Fridays, and Campy's Corner will be on Sunday mornings. So
it's going to be a strange podcast, that one.
prep your tinfoil beanies, ladies and gents. There is, it's all, the only thing you need.
Yeah.
But anyway, so that's what's going to be happening. So we are going away for a couple of weeks, and then we're going to be back with a hell of a lot of content. It's going to be absolutely fantastic. So thank you to you for continuing to listen and watch. And I will say we will have a sponsor going forward as well to help us with those bits and pieces. I'm looking forward, just personally looking forward to watching you engage with a live read for a sponsor. We've got about 60 seconds to do one.
I'm more than competent.
It's going to be fun.
I'll get there.
We'll make it. We'll try and make it as enjoyable as possible.
Confident.
Anyway, that's that. Campy's bin.
Yeah, Matteo Binotto firmly put himself in that bin this weekend.
Super glued.
Jeez, look, what a disaster. Why on earth would Leclerc go on to the Hearts? Every person that went on to the Hearts, their race pace diminished massively. It was clearly cold. They clearly couldn't get the temperature in a warm-up. Ferrari probably thought they had a lot more downforce so they could get those tyres into the optimum operation window. But, geez, what an absolute shambles to see Mercedes come through and dominate like they did. They beat a Red Bull and two Ferraris convincingly this weekend, and I think they had the race pace after the first 5 or 6 laps to solidify themselves as probably the number 2 car on track over a race distance. Not so much one lap at the moment, but Matteo Binotto, you got to be getting this stuff right on the pit wall. This is going to cost you not only a world championship for one of your drivers, but a constructors, and you'll lose second place if Mercedes continue to go on the roll that they're on at the moment.
Who would you like to take out of Campy's bin, Freya?
Who else is in it? I mean, I completely agree with Binotto. And the thing which
Are
frustrated
you in
me,
there?
Probably. The other thing which frustrated me as well is he doesn't just go and own it afterwards. Like he doesn't say, "Yep, we stuffed that up." Like
No.
his interview after that, he kind of said, "Oh, the tires didn't evolve in the way that we thought they were, but that's because the car wasn't behaving. We thought that was going to." And I was like, but when you look at Leclerc's pace before he pitted, it was absolutely there. He was absolutely taking it to max. And you just go, like, I just don't buy it. So I think it's one thing to be able to turn around and have some, you give some grace when you've made decisions like that just weren't right, but he doesn't. And that's what's actually kind of frustrating to watch. Now, I know he needs to kind of, hold face a bit, which I understand, but at the same time, you do see others taking significantly more ownership for those decisions along the way. So I think my bin is prettier than yours, but he's in there too.
Okay, I'm taking Gasly out of your bin, Campy. I know I was never in your bin, Freya, at all, because he started at the very back of the grid. In fact, he started in the pit lane and finished 12th.
Yeah.
Wicked.
Look, I'm just saying, it's pretty good. Anyway, let's talk about qualifying. Nicholas Latifi,
In the wet.
fastest in FP3. Stop the count. That's it. That's the Grand Prix right there. All let's go away. It would have certainly been a lot more interesting than Max Verstappen winning the 2022 World Drivers' Championship. But fastest in FP3.
Yep.
And then in Q1, blitzes purple sector 1, green sector 2, stuffs it into the last corner, qualifies 20th. I mean, find me a more Nicholas Latifi thing than that. That was outstanding, I thought. What are your other takeaways from qualifying, Campy?
Oh, just on that, I think it's clear the Williams can warm up any tyre in any condition probably better than any other team on the grid at the moment. Hence why we saw the result. Who was it? I think Leclerc over the radio said, geez, a 141. He said, on Inters, that's godlike or something. So,
good.
Anyway, good on Latifi. He actually had a pretty good weekend compared to his teammate this weekend. I thought he got the better of him. Not that I saw any of it on track. I'd like to, see a bit more of the back markers and even 7, 8, 9, 10. But, hey, that's just the world we live in motorsport at the moment. Qualifying was good. I was a bit disappointed in McLaren's pace, particularly in Danny Rick's car.
You can't be disappointed in Lando Norris. He can't fall.
Yeah, no, he's good. He got it together. Danny Rick was on used tyres in Q3, though. He had none because he had to do the 2 runs in Q3 and Q2. So, anyway, they didn't have a fresh set for Q3, which is a shame, but his best time, which was in Q2, wouldn't have put him any higher up the grid. So, really interesting. I think Ferrari's clearly the best car over 1 lap. But interesting that Red Bull had some issues in qualifying but it just didn't seem to affect them in the race. So
Yeah, look, I think McLaren are getting there.
they're getting better.
Daniel's not getting there with this car, but very
We'll
clearly
talk about-
Lando.
we'll
Very
talk
clearly
about
Lando
Daniel's
is.
race last night.
Yeah, we will. But I mean, Lando did have the pace. He qualified in 4th, and DR qualifying in 9th, which is probably where he should be qualifying anyway in that car. In thinking about Alpine being a faster car, that makes sense.
I just look at the gains that Mercedes as an organisation have made over the last 12, 13 races.
Yep.
I mean, McLaren started very poorly in the first 2 and seemed to get it together. And at times, they were the better Mercedes engine-powered car, but their development department has done nothing compared to what the Mercedes Works team's done. It's a shame.
Yep, completely agree. Freya, there's a new white Ferrari on the grid in the version of Haas too.
Yeah, and why would you copy anyone else? To Gunter's, statement afterwards, he was like, if someone else is faster than you, then why wouldn't you copy them? And to be clear, we're not copying a Williams. So, again, when we talk about team principals being honest, you can't fault him there. And it was almost a shame that those guys didn't perform better, because I kind of, again, I just love his transparency. But I think the other thing which is interesting with qualifying was Perez just doesn't seem to have any luck with the timing of assessment for his lap times or more the point track limits, in that he got his lap time deleted and then reinstated, which was maybe better than having it deleted after that qualifying session had already finished, which happened last time. So I was glad that they kind of assessed that pretty quickly. But that was frustrating. I mean, for the most part, things for qualifying were all right, but that type of thing irritates me because it's just disruption where it doesn't need to be. But yeah, I know, like you said, McLaren looked like they were making gains, but Ricciardo was, he was faster in Q1 and Q2 than he was in Q3, which was frustrating to watch that kind of just decline over time.
And of course, George Russell takes his maiden pole, which, again, geez, I wish I had Sky Germany. But look, I get it. A British bias from a British broadcaster makes sense. But it's just the feed for everyone else. It's just Foxtel and KO here and ESPN in the US being lazy and not putting their own people on the ground. Yeah. And we have to deal with it. I could not care about this Mr. Saturday stuff any less. Great lap from him. He didn't go purple anywhere. He was just fast around the whole thing. That is so impressive. Normally for that last couple of laps, Campy, in Q3, the guy who manages to do a purple sector somewhere is generally the one who gets it across the line in first. And you looked at Sainz's lap and you went, wow, fantastic. No one's going to better that. Okay, George is coming over the line and he's got 2 greens. Oh, well, he's just not, there's absolutely no one. Hang on a second, he's got first. Yeah,
I sort of look at his call. It was a great lap and all credit to him for getting it done. My issue is why is it that we get to the last lap of qualifying and he goes 5/10 quicker than what his previous best was? Is that these guys are using engine modes and they got things in the car that they can do to get better for that final lap? Track evolution was not there, particularly in Q3, because it was getting wetter. Where does this 5/10 come from, and why aren't they consistently doing that 5/10 quicker? I mean, you look at the greats, they're lap after lap at the best. They can get within 1 and 2 tenths of it every single time on the money. To find 5/10 is daylights, is days in motorsport. I just don't understand why you do it in the final lap and not consistently do it throughout qualifying beforehand, because he came out of nowhere. Is that a reflection on him, or is it engine modes in the car?
But then
they can't use engine modes.
But then you've got Hamilton back in 7th. So if it was something like that, then why wasn't he doing, the same thing? It doesn't, kind of add up.
He had an issue on his final lap.
He did, and he didn't have DRS as well, I think, from memory as well in qualifying. So, we know that's going to cause
issue,
problems. So. But at the same time, I don't know. I just wonder if he just takes that long to figure it out.
Yeah, but Lewis and George were within 1.5 of each other, 2 tenths at every lap during qualifying, except for the last one. So where does that 5.5? That's
is the track evolution though? Might be right at the very end, the last lap of the day.
It's not traffic evolution in Q3. It doesn't evolve that much. If you look at the difference in times in Q1 and Q2, it's like, well, hang on, this has to come from somewhere. Where's his performance coming from?
Yeah, but to be fair, though, it may have been a gust of wind in a slightly different direction around
Totally.
Hungaroring because it can be very affected in that area.
Yep.
That makes that difference. Because, as you said, Freya, I mean, there's obviously Hamilton had an issue with his DRS, but first to seventh, not that it mattered anyway, because we got a 2021 podium at the result anyway. But here is how it played out for qualifying. George Russell first, then was Carlos Sainz, Leclerc, Norris, Ocon, and Alonso fifth and sixth. Alpine had a pretty good showing when it came to qualifying. Hamilton in seventh, with Valtteri Bottas behind him in eighth, which meant everyone behind Bottas was like, sick, well, we're going to finish on the podium, because if there's anything's like last year, then VB is going to go play bowling again. It was Danny Rick, Verstappen, Perez, 10th and 11th for Red Bull.
Yeah.
What? Joe, 12th, Magnussen, 13th, Stroll, Schumacher, Tsunoda, Albon, Seb Vettel in 18th after having an issue in FP3 and punting it into a wall, and then trying to repair the car. Good guy Seb again, trying to get mucked in and help the team sort it out. He could only manage 18th. Pierre Gasly 19th, and Nick Latifi, as I said, up at the top there in 20th. Let's go through it team by team. Let's start right down the very back. Freya. Let's talk about Williams. Albon finishing in 17th and Nick Latifi finishing in 18th.
Yeah, I think both Williams cars got damage on the first lap, so it wasn't going to be an easy race for them from the get-go. But then they also both managed to avoid hard tyres, I think, as well, which was a good decision. Probably still got them the best result which they could, which was not very high up, I think 17th and 18th. But, Latifi was kind of complaining of balance issues throughout. And again, with that early damage, it kind of looked like he was just struggling a lot, and then went pretty aggressive with his stops, but just didn't seem to get his tyres to be able to kind of switch on. And yeah, it was kind of disappointing for those two, because I think, free practice, as you mentioned, it looked like they might be a bit stronger in the race, but then, it didn't really kind of eventuate in qualifying or in the race either. So I think as much as I would love to say it's a weekend to forget, there's actually a lot to learn from that weekend with them as well. So yeah, it's disappointing, because they've had some success this season, which has been great for us to watch, just seeing things, kind of shuffled up a little bit in terms of the grid that we expect to see, but not a great showing from them this weekend overall.
Albon's front wing went Explodo Patronum. There you go. That's a Harry Potter reference for you, Campy. Did you get that? Nope. In the first couple laps, as you said, so they had to clear debris off the track, proper explode, like proper boof, which we haven't seen a lot of this year in terms of Formula One car parts being strewn all over the track. And yeah, Latifi struggling. I finally listened. I don't listen to a lot of F1 podcasts anymore, but I finally listened to the Beyond the Grid episode with Alex Albon from a couple of months ago, and that was after the Australian Grand Prix. He is doing some good stuff in that team, I think, and we spoke a little bit about where potentially the team's going to next year. Now, by all accounts, now that there is actually an open seat on the market, maybe Oscar goes there. We'll talk about that when we get to Aston Martin, but we still haven't heard anything about Nick Latifi going anywhere. So by all accounts, Latifi's still with Williams for next year, although it hasn't been announced yet. We are now at the start of driver silly season time. But if he's going to put performances in, if he actually nailed that last corner, I think, in Q1, then that would have been outstanding to see. As you said, the fact that they're warming up the tyres, incredible.
Yeah.
Like one of the only cars on the grid to be able to do that at the moment, Campy, as you say. So we're still, and I asked you this question last week, in the trajectory for Williams v McLaren at the same period of time when they're right at the very back of the grid, the Alonso era for McLaren with Stoffel Van Dorn to now where we are, probably from last year when Jos Capito took over, I still think there's glimpses of the team being able to move forward. They're still at the very back, unfortunately. This is where we start. We're talking to them very back at the podcast at the moment, but there's still that ability to move forward. So just for our listeners, I think it'd be interesting, keep in the back of your mind over the next couple of weeks, as the driver market plays out, is it better for someone like Oscar Piastri to go to a back of the grid team where there is zero pressure and you help develop a car? Or is it better to go to the campus, which is at the very back of the grid, but actually a lot of pressure to perform in a car that doesn't perform?
Look, I think Alpine should get rid of one of their drivers.
Who should they get rid of, Campy?
Ocon.
Good.
That's they should be put like
Otmar, call him. You've got his number.
You can't have your cake and eat it too. I don't know why Williams is seen as such a destination for new drivers coming in. If I'm a new driver and George Russell, He spent 3 years there driving the wheels off that car and got some good results and glimpses of what he could do at times in qualifying. I think of Spa last year and stuff like that.
Awesome.
Where they got it right. So if I'm Oscar, I don't want to go there. I want to at least go to the works team straight away because that's who he's contracted to. But I don't think Alpine are ballsy enough to make that call. So as for Seb stepping away, opens up the door for somebody else. Aston may take Latifi's money and go, hey, that's good for us.
Or Hulkenberg 3.0.
That ain't happening.
Hulk wouldn't want to go back.
No, why would you?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, he's got a good relationship with Otmar.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, but he's gone now.
He's gone.
So, well,
might crack.
Tell me you'd want to drive for Lawrence Stroll. He's not a dude that instills confidence, is it? He's not like a likable guy. Like you bump into one of us around the street, you genuinely come away and go, geez, they're pretty good to hang out with. They're cool people. Lawrence, mate, he doesn't have that vibe.
Do people bump into you on the street? Do you walk along the street?
Straightforward. Don't look at me.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, but like he doesn't seem like a nice guy. He's ruthless and it comes across.
There seems to be an interesting culture at Aston Martin. We've had that conversation before, and
Yep.
Freya, I think when we were debriefing the British Grand Prix with Saxby, we were sort of talking about that as well. But there are, and as Richard said, there are good people within that organisation.
Yes.
It's just trying to figure it out and get the right people at the right time to move it forward. Let's talk, Freya, about Haas. Mick Schumacher finishing in 14th and K-Mag finishing in 16th. K-Mag got a black and orange very early on for his front wing end plate hanging off the car, which pretty much was him done and dusted too. And he got sent on the hards and then didn't perform on the hards, and everyone else went, I know what we'll do. We'll put him on the hards. Oh, goodness sake.
Yeah, it was. He seems pretty much in protest of that black and orange flag. Like he didn't seem to think that the damage was that bad or that it was really justified being called in. And then on top of that, you kind of go, would they have switched to those tyres at that point in time? Don't know. But like you said, he really, really struggled after that, finishing in 16th. And then Schumacher, we didn't really see much of him during the race. Like he seemed to have a kind of reasonable enough start, but then just couldn't hold on to it. So it was a bit of a nothing race for them. But yeah, like you said, that hard tyre, first to try it out, should have been the last. Unfortunately, weren't.
But the upgrades that they brought kind of didn't really show much, did they? When they first sent them out, Mick had the old package and K-Mac had the new package, and there was like only a couple of tenths difference between them.
Upgrades are great until you have them on the car for 3-4 races and you fully understand how they work and how they integrate into what you have in your car design and philosophies anyway. So I wouldn't read too much into that. I think Magnussen had a good start.
Yeah.
Put himself up in a 10th in points. I didn't like the flag. I just thought that was, I could see we're too safety conscious. That's like broken wing, who cares? Just
We're still holding on.
Yeah, we got halos to protect them, so they got helmets. Good on them. Well,
I understand the point because Albon's front end plate had similarly just exploded all over the place, only really the 2 laps before that. So that's fine. But yeah, it was a pretty quick black and orange flag for them.
Yeah.
They probably should have just gone onto the softs and tried to make it, anyway, whatever. It is what it is, unfortunately, isn't it, for the Haas team? But, favorite looking upgrade, those baby bell side pods, whatever you want to call them, look bloody delightful. They look great on the Ferrari, have done all year. So I'm all for more of that kind of look on the grid.
We didn't talk about the Aston Martin new wing they bought this year.
I haven't talked about Aston Martin yet. That's why.
Oh, right.
They're further ahead in the grid,
we
mate.
did too. All right.
Seb got points. Just settle down, mate. If only you had a run sheet in front of you. We're going to talk about Alfa Romeo next. Valtteri Bottas had a big DNF, Campy, and Joe Guan Yu in 13th. Talking about rear wings, Tommy T will hate this, but I really enjoyed the Italian flag on the very back of the Alfa Romeo. I think it looks fantastic.
Yeah. Awesome.
Great.
Awesome.
Anything else to add?
Love the Italian flag. It's great. No, it is good. No, it is good. Hey, no, it looks great on that red and white livery. That is one of my favourite liveries. And to see it in person, particularly Melbourne this year, just looked a cut above the rest, in my opinion, unlike the Alpine. But
that's because it looked like a reverse pink ice cream.
Shame for Bottas. He's consistently puts himself in the right spots.
Yeah.
And it's either the car that's letting him go or strategy or things in the team. he's clearly the better driver than Zhou, although Zhou's had some good performances. This week, I think Zhou was very below par compared to where Bottas was. But unfortunate for Bottas to fail but that's typical of a Ferrari engine. Fail in the last 10 laps, give up too easy. So, anyway.
Yeah, what did you think, Freya? It's a shame, obviously, for VB. Tiffany Cromwell participating in Tour de France at the moment as well.
Her team is absolutely killing it over there. But yeah, for Bottas, third retirement of the season, it's got to be so frustrating with reliability issues like that. Things that are just so far out of your control. I think it's really interesting when you can see that drivers are uncomfortable with their car, or they can tell something's up, and there's little things that they can either tweak or adjustments that they can make that then, kind of resolve the issue or make it a better experience for them at the very least. With stuff like that, it's just gone, you're out. And nothing you can do about it, obviously. It's just must be so frustrating. But they also kind of back themselves into a one-stop corner with this race. So I think there's a bit for them to work on from a strategy perspective. They had kind of hints of pace over the weekend, but it didn't really kind of result in anything. And they both had pretty miserable starts and dropped back a few places. So they weren't really in a great position to start off with to actually do anything with it, and potentially would have stayed out of trouble if they had got better starts. But not a great result despite the car livery. I don't know how I feel about it. Not sure I agree. But I haven't.
It's all right. It's all right to be incorrect. AlphaTauri, new power unit for Pierre Gasly, Campy, but he's still got P12. What an outstanding driver Pierre Gasly is. Right. Awesome. Amazing. Goodness, isn't he the best? He's the GOAT. Sonoda, 19th. Yeah. Terrible.
Yeah, had a spin.
AlphaTauri's terrible.
Had a spin.
What's happened this year?
Had a spin, or Max had a spin too.
Yeah, but at least he's kept it. Sorry, Max Verstappen spins always ending up in the right direction again every single time. It's either Toro Rosso epic drift in Brazil, where he manages to put it there, and everyone's like, "Oh my god, there he comes." Sorry, Red Bull, or Germany when we were at what was it? Super wet race where bloody Hulkenberg could have won and he didn't end up winning because he put it into the gravel like everyone else, went onto the ice section. Where was that?
That was Germany.
Yeah, whatever the German track is, I can't remember. It's terrible. I talk about Formula One all the time. Dude, Hockenheim ring. There you go. Thank you. I was going to say, it's another ring from somewhere. We got Hungaro ring this weekend. He spins. Oh, I've won. Oh, how did he do that? I don't know.
Leclerc did it in P3 too, in the wet.
Yep.
Coming out of 1, 2, into 3.
Yeah, but not in a race.
Yeah.
It's exclusively a Max Verstappen. I can do a spin and still win a race.
Yeah.
Package.
I'd be worried if I was AlphaTauri this year. They have not gone on with the engine that they were supplied with last year. It's clear. I don't.
Is it the same power unit, but just the aero's not doing the same thing?
And the design's taken a big step back.
Mm.
Last year, I wasn't thrilled with their race pace, but their race pace was good enough on most tracks when they qualified well and they had a good car over one lap. Hence why Gasly got some of the results that he did last year, and Yuki got some good results this year.
Outstanding driver.
This year, I think Yuki has got better results than Gasly over the whole season, but he's still not the number one driver in that team. He's not as consistent, but he seems to have this extra gear that he can get to, which is starting to come to fruition once in every 4 races we see it. It's like, I think Yuki was better than I think he's better. That's just my opinion.
Extra gear, like incredibly fashionable jackets.
No, well, he just has like this extra pace that he can generate out of a car that, can beat Gasly by the 3.5 tenths once in every 4 or 5 races. And it's happened 3 times this year. So
it has. Yeah.
Which I like, whereas Gasly doesn't seem to have that extra pace that Yuki shows on occasion.
How good is Pierre Gasly, Freya?
Better than Campy thinks, that's for sure. I don't know. I just kind of wonder if like Pierre was so comfortable obviously in last year's car, and we said last year every single time like he is outperforming this car, weekend on weekend, and when he didn't, it usually wasn't his fault. And this year, it's been a massive shift, and I just kind of wonder if we're kind of seeing something similar to what we're seeing in other teams, where you have someone who was just very comfortable in how things were, and now perhaps hasn't adapted as well. And Yuki Tsunoda this weekend though has. So I think it'll be interesting. Yuki was struggling for grip a lot of this weekend, and I think he would have been pretty frustrated. But I think overall, you kind of go, this was a team that at least for one of them last year, we were constantly saying, how's that 6th position kind of warming up for you? Like he's so comfortable there. And now we're kind of saying, are you back in the points yet? Like it's just not, they're not going to be satisfied with how they're going.
And he signed a contract for next year too for Gasly. Not that there's really anywhere else for him to go, but
well, where does he go?
Well, that's it. I think. Look, next year
he'll have a career like Perez.
This time next year, no, he won't because he's not going back to that Red Bull. This time next year,
where he may get a shot at a top team after 10 years of driving.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I think this time next year, when we're looking at the 2024 season and a lot of these contracts are up, these existing contracts are up, it'll be interesting to see where people think people should be going firstly and who, from a young driver point of view, that includes Oscar as well, but you look at people like Logan Sargent, even Nick De Vries. De Vries has come into the conversation about Aston Martin, and let's talk about Aston Martin now because, yes, this empty seat left by Sebastian Vettel, this is a Mercedes power unit team.
Yep.
Nick De Vries is a Mercedes driver. He got into that Mercedes, into Lewis's Mercedes in FP1 the weekend before, and he did a pretty good job.
Yeah.
I mean, he is the Formula E world champion, and you can think about whatever you want in that respect. Okay, it's absolutely not as quick as Formula One, but he was good in F2, Campy. And we know what Toto Wolff can do, Esteban Ocon, George Russell. Look at them, where they are, even still VB in the same kind of way.
To Pascal Verlaine.
Yeah. It's okay. Well, 3 out of 4 ain't bad. There's a song in that. But I think it's interesting to note because if Toto has incentive to put him somewhere, then he will. And again, Aston Martin are going to be wanting to shore up their supply and get as kind of a discount, I suppose, as much as possible, all that kind of other stuff.
Yep.
He is a legit option for that seat.
And his relationship with Toto is they are chummy and they are very good friends.
Yes.
And, I mean, Toto's got some ownership in Aston Martin too as part of that conglomerate that owns it.
Exactly right.
Yeah, I think a Mercedes driver will end up in there, but I've got an issue with some of these F2 drivers at the moment. I mean, we've seen Mick Schumacher did everything he could have in the junior. He did everything in the junior categories to deserve his role in F1.
Yep.
Oscar Piastri done everything and more, and probably better, just as good as anyone that's come through in the last 10 years.
Sure.
I just don't think these guys in F2, I mean, you look at Liam Lawson's and stuff like that, they've had 3 or 4 years in F2 and they've never gone on to win a championship. Now, there's reasons for that and you got to put it all together, but I just don't think they're there. If it was me, I would maybe be looking at someone outside of the square, someone who's raced in the category before that's looking for another shot. What's that American guy who's racing in NASCAR at the moment who raced for Haas when they first came?
Rossi?
Yeah.
Alexander Rossi.
Maybe look at someone like that because that guy, not so much this year, but he was incredible. I just think out of the box.
What about Marcus Ericsson? Won Indy 500 this year.
He did.
Can drive.
Takuma Sato, that'd be good to see him back on the grid.
Can you imagine? We're going down an Indy hole.
I don't want to pick up a kid for the sake of picking up a kid who thinks he's deserved it. I'd like to see something out of the box on this one and try and find someone. Okay,
Takuma Sato, sold. Yeah. I agree completely. But yeah, Aston Martin's an interesting one, isn't it? Freya, I found it very interesting when the F1 media did a little whip around to all the drivers to basically say, how do you feel about it? And Lance is like, I'm not going to miss his long briefing sessions. Okay, cool. Anything nice to say, buddy? Or no, that's it? Okay, cool. Thanks very much for coming. Very, very bizarre. You really have to want to be in Formula One, I think, to sit in that seat because you know it's not necessarily the best seat in the house and you're going to have some interesting conversations.
They've got an Australian connection family now, the Stroll family.
Yes, they do.
Which someone alluded to on the Discord. Mm-hmm. So do we treat them like we do VB now or?
No. Moving swiftly along.
Still Canadians.
Still, because I'm sorry, but Scotty James is part of the Red Bull family. So if anything, we treat all of Red Bull like
that's too long a bow. It's like fiance of the sister of the driver who is only a driver because he's a son. So no.
I don't even know her name. Apparently she's a singer. I was like, she's probably not.
It's Lance's sister.
Anyway. I don't know, no.
Yeah, well,
Anyway, good for Scotty James.
Yeah, great for him. But Freya,
feel like being an
for
Olympian is
Aston
good
Martin,
for
they
Scotty
bought a
James,
new
but
rear
anyway.
wing for this weekend.
Sorry, James, I couldn't hear that question.
Unbelievable. Can we just all get it
No.
together? Aston Martin, new rear wings. Very serious business here on Lakeside Drive podcast.
Big interpretation for this new rear wing too.
Yeah.
It's like what we saw last year. I'm not across the technicalities of it, but apparently there is a defined angle that you have to have on the wing, but it doesn't say where that angle has to be. So Aston Martin have put that angle on the edge of the wing, and it looks very much like something from a Red Bull last year. So there's been no protests, and the FIA have seemed to sign off on it. So we could see some big moves in the rear wing department in the second half of the year.
Thank you. For someone who knows nothing about it technically, you've done a great job explaining it, to be honest.
Good on Aston Martin's engineers for working hard and finding that out.
Yeah. Can't say the same for McLaren. Yes. Anything to add about Aston Martin, Freya?
I think what was funny was someone's observation with Stroll this weekend that he just kind of pops up out of nowhere. And he's just like, as though he's just kind of like lurking around, kind of ready to be there when the opportunity presents. But I just kind of wonder if that...
He's a bit like Tommy too.
I wonder if that says as much about him or if it's more about the broadcast where you go, we just don't see what's going on towards the back of the pack, and then all of a sudden they're in front of you. And it happened with Checo at Silverstone as well, where he was making his way through the field. We weren't seeing any of it, and then he kind of popped up and was like, hola. And I feel like that was kind of the same with Stroll this weekend, except that he was next to Ricciardo when he did that. So anyway, they need to be in the points consistently with a brand like that. And I think next year, in terms of driver market, they need someone with some experience who can help with development that they need. I think putting a rookie in there would be a mistake. I think they don't have the kind of establishment that they need in order to be able to bring someone young along like that. And they would be in a much better position to bring somebody in who's been in the category before and can add more than just potential, because anyone new is an unknown, and you don't get anything in terms of potential ability to develop the car. So, yeah, I think it would be a mistake to put a newbie in there.
And Stroll is not a number one lead driver in a Grand Prix team.
No,
he should be after 7 seasons or whatever he's had.
No, Brad is the number one mechanic though on the pit wall. How good's Brad? Let's move swiftly along to Alpine. Fernando Alonso in 8th, Esteban Ocon in 9th. This is the first time we've heard Alonso be properly pissed off.
Fair enough too.
Ocon in front of him. That was. Yeah, I mean, Fernando was faster.
Well, Alpine got some real decisions to make at the moment. I don't think they would have scored any more points if they'd let Fernando in front of Ocon. But Fernando is clearly the faster driver. Maybe not in qualifying, but over a race distance, it's a bit like, it's not as big as the gap from Danny Rick to Ocon, but Fernando has clearly got a better race pace and drives that car way better than what Ocon does over a race. Unfortunately, on a track like this where it's tough to pass and you got a Frenchman in front of you that ain't willing to play by the rules, standard, I think the team suffers. But then Ocon, as a racer, I can understand his mentality. He's like, I'm not letting this guy pass. I'm in front of him for a reason. So how do and Ocon knows he's on the back foot, probably mentally, and at every stage he gets the chance to prove that he's in front of, he's going to put his elbows up and go, well, I can't be that bad because I'm matching it with a 2-time world champion and, arguably one of the greatest drivers of our generation. So, yeah, look, they should just get rid of Ocon because he's not a team player and he's not doing the right thing. But then again, Alpine should be giving some team orders and going, all right, let him go.
Yeah, and I think
we've seen it consistently enough over the last 3 races now that, anyway.
That's even the thing that Aston Martin did, Freya. They actually switched the 2 drivers around, which is why Seb finished ahead of Lance. So if Aston Martin can do it, surely Alpine can do it.
Well, I think it's like we have this conversation all the time, whether it's the Alpines, Aston Martins, the McLarens, even the Ferraris at times, in terms of going, what is the right call in some of these situations, in terms of going, do you just let them race? Do you look at your data and say, it looks like driver A has more potential here, let's get him in clear air, put them ahead and make a team orders call? Do you just tell someone to hold position? Like, we have this conversation all the time, and I think so much of it has to do with more than just data, as much as what is somebody's racing potential. And I think what's interesting with that is that when you get Alonso in the mix with somebody, he's so much more likely to do something with it than Ocon is. And so in moments like that, I kind of go, I want them to put Alonso in front because he is more likely to do something with that opportunity because of his racecraft in comparison to Ocon. Whereas I don't think that's necessarily always as easy and a call in comparison to that kind of situation. But they had a funny weekend. Like, they really want to try and make that one stop work, but they also struggled with the hards as well. And they kind of prioritised to set up for quali, which I think really impacted their race today. But so if they hadn't had to go with the hard tyres, then you could even have seen Alonso up there with Norris. But as it was, he didn't even come close. So I think they'll have a lot to look back on this weekend, including Ricciardo managing to get both of them at once.
Yeah, well, McLaren had an okay showing. Lando in 7th.
Yeah.
DR in 15th, 13th, I think, and then 5-second penalty because of the contact with Stroll, which was absolutely fair enough from a penalty point of view. Yeah, absolutely. But you know who's to blame? McLaren for not having the right allocation of tyres. Why do you bring only one set of mediums and then go use through all your softs? Of course, he's going to understeer on ice cold tyres into the guy. It was Danny Rick's fault because of the tyre choice, and that's because McLaren didn't bring more mediums to the Grand Prix weekend.
Look, I'm biased here, but
so am I. But it's still McLaren's fault.
Stroll came into that so late. I don't think Danny Rick was expecting him.
Would you say that he turned in on Danny Rick?
He didn't turn in on Danny Rick. He just arrived a hell of a lot later than what we thought.
Yeah. Okay.
It was almost torpedo-like up the outside. But
Danny Kvyat.
I mean, that happens. Look, Danny Rick, geez, his race was ruined at the exit of turn 1 on lap 1.
Yep.
He started in 9th. He actually made up 2 positions off the start. I don't think, for me, he was aggressive enough into the turn 1 braking, and Perez went round the outside, so he lost a spot there. On the exit, he got held up by Alonso, who had an issue on the exit, and he got tapped, which at that stage he was in front of your Max Verstappen's and all the people behind him, but he had to get off the gas going down into turn 2, which ultimately meant he was so compromised on his exit because he had to get off the gas, avoid collision, which ended up happening, and he dropped back 4 spots from there. Now, if he had got the start that he wanted and didn't have contact, I think his race pace would have been a hell of a lot better compared to what we saw. I don't think it affected his times massively, but he did have some downforce issues throughout the rest of the race. He got himself into a good spot, made that cracking move, but then he had lost 15 seconds to Norris by that stage just because of what happened on the exit of turn 1. It's motorsport, these things happen, but if we're going to realistically look at what happened to Danny Rick this weekend, that was the start of where it went bad. He made the moves, he got back up into position, but once he'd lost the 15 seconds to his teammate, that always was going to mean that he was going to struggle going on to the hards. I would have expected McLaren to be better than just bring one set of mediums for a race. I don't know. They're clearly the best tyre is that C4 tyre for them, which was the medium this weekend. So, yeah, look, it's frustrating to watch. I'll tell you what, I've had a shocking 6 months when it comes to sport. Danny Rick being number 1, it's hard to watch.
Let's sit down. Let's have a quick chat about it. Are you feeling okay about it?
The All Blacks, mate, they're just killing me at the moment.
Oh, no. All Blacks. It's a shame.
And the Bombers too. It's just,
the Bombers.
It just hurts. Anyway,
I'm sorry, mate.
Moving on. I just felt that incident with Stroll. Who gives a shit at that point?
Yeah, I mean, you're right.
Seriously, who
you're right.
cares?
But look, I mean, I get the 5-second penalty. It made sense. The tyres were dumb. They weren't turning on. That's why he understeered. It makes a lot and he was trying to defend for Stroll, and I mean, Stroll on the radio.
And no one cares that he hit Stroll. So anyway,
yeah, no, I think that's a good shout. Right, Lando Norris. Though, can we talk about him?
Did as good as he could.
I think finishing in P7 was pretty outstanding for him, considering the pace of that car. Great qualifying. He was out of position, though, because of those two Red Bulls. So put that into place again, and I think that's where he's looking. At the end of the day, very unfortunately, and as you say, it's hard to watch as a Danny Rick fan, but he is consistently extracting pace out of that McLaren. McLaren's not a great car, but he's getting pace. He's getting some luck, whatever you want to call it, but they're getting there. So hopefully, my point in that is hopefully, we're talking last week, weren't we, about people designing cars and everything else.
Yep.
There was a really great part of Alex Albon's podcast where he said to Tom Clarkson, what you see in terms of a driver coming first, for example, use Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz as an example. What you see with Charles' performance this year, especially early on, and how outstanding he is, isn't necessarily all about Charles. It might be Carlos doing things in the background, especially last year in his first year in Ferrari, helping the car set up to get into a really good point. And Alex Albon said when he was ditched out of Red Bull at the end of 20 going into 21, he moved immediately into that development role for the car. And he spent so much time in that simulator between 20 to 21. And when he got debriefed by the two drivers in Sergio Perez and Max Verstappen, they all both said to him, geez, I tell you what, the car feels really good in the rear. And that's exactly where he was focusing that whole time. So it wasn't necessarily because Max was a faster driver or Perez was a faster driver. There was this other stuff going on in the background. So from a positive point of view, because it's easy, as you would say, it's very easy to be very negative about this stuff. From a positive point of view, let's hope, and I would imagine, honestly, take all of the media things every way, and yes, a lot of attention, a lot of social media posts from McLaren going on about Danny Rick at the moment, but take all of that away and you just have the two drivers and you've got the two mechanics and you've got the people designing the car and everything else. I would suggest there is actually a really good relationship there with Lando and Daniel. Yep. The media love a good spin and everything else. So positively, if we can try and do that, thinking about what that means for the rest of this year, going into next year, because Daniel's not leaving McLaren. He's staying there. That's what he said. McLaren are happy with him. Andreas Seidel, the team principal, is more than happy with him and consistently says that. Let's hope that they are getting to a good point between both these drivers that makes the car faster. Because at this point, as hard as it is to say, Daniel Rick's not looking like he's winning a World Drivers' Championship anytime soon. That is hard to say. That's just a reality. So, but if he can get back up on that upward curve, then maybe McLaren is the team to be with, and we don't know what's going to happen next year. He could re-sign, and anyway, do you know what I mean? Like it's very easy to become cynical about it, Freya, I think, but I think it's important to remain positive, right?
Well, I think as long as there's some success within
what I will say,
a team, then it suggests that there should be something there that the other person can achieve. You know, you kind of go, if Norris was sitting in 13th every weekend as well, you just go, clearly you have nothing to work with. Like, where is the hope? So it is, you know, that kind of indication that there is something there to extract, whether or not it's Ricciardo coming to terms with the car, whether or not it's their willingness to do things differently. Like you said, we just don't know, and we don't see the full picture of it in terms of who's responsible for certain development decisions and that type of thing. But to have a driver who is performing, you know, consistently within the top 10, that is hopeful. If you're supporting the team as a whole, I think sometimes we overplay actually how well he is driving this car a little bit, and you kind of go 7th this weekend, you go, right, best you can do. In the grand scheme of things, you started in 4th, the faster cars got in front of you and you held on to 7th. Like, I actually think he, if he was that good, then he would have done more with where he was at to start off with the opportunity of being in 4th. But he was a full minute behind 6th, you know, by the time he got the checkered flag. So there is a very distinct gap there, and you know, they're not best of the rest. Yeah, we've seen that with the Alpines. But if you're looking at the team as a whole, sure, I think it's good to see that he's doing better than than Ricciardo is, because it suggests that there is something there to be done. For
me, I'll look at Danny Rick. I don't think Danny Rick's going to have 3 terrible years in a car on the trot. I didn't think he'd have one bad year, but he's had a year and a half now. It's bad. He's halfway through his contract. He's got a year and a half left. He's had his backside handed to him generally for the 18 months that he's been there. But if I'm that organisation, I'm throwing away this year because, as Freya said, they're still a minute behind the top 3, man, the top top cars on the grid.
Mm.
Everything they do from this midsummer break till race 1 next year should be focused on next year and develop, and what are we going to do to give our drivers a car that can not only win races but hopefully make that jump to a world championship driving car. And I would throw everything away and start from probably already have. But everything they do from now on this year, yes, they got to race, yes, they got to show up and do stuff, but it should be all with the eye on the prize for next year. Slate is clean when it comes next year. Everyone starts at 0-0 again, and away we go. I just don't see Danny Rick having 3 bad years in a row. And next year he's driving for his career.
Yeah.
That's just the way they got to look at it. Unfortunately, they've designed a heap of this year. Not helped by the Mercedes engine either. So, but Mercedes are making some gains, which is good.
Well, and that's what I was about. Let's talk about Mercedes. They are making gains. And earlier in the year, again, when you and I spoke to Richard Saxby, he said, they've got several directions to go in. Well, yeah, everyone has several directions to go in. Doesn't mean you're going to be quick, but they've found what is making them faster. They're not the third fastest grid on the car, Campy. They are they're not the second fastest. They're absolutely the third fastest. But consistency-wise, they will end up second in the championship because Ferrari keep getting things wrong, either in strategy or actual performance in the car, right? So for Mercedes, they're doing well. It's their second double podium in a week, third for Russell, second for Hamilton. Has to be, great drives by both of them, really. Great drives by both of them. George was very impressive trying to keep in front of Max before, obviously, Max was just always going to walk away with it if he didn't have any engine issues, which he ended up not having any issues with. But it's hard to say because I was like, oh, this is good. I'm glad that Mercedes are back. And then I'm like, hang on a second. For years I've been saying, no, I don't want this at all.
Yeah. Look, I think... Look, Mercedes, again, last week I was like, what an organisation. I said that. We need to say that again. They're a bit slow in that first stint on full fuel loads. I think they're letting the gap at. But I think if Lewis was on pole last night, it would have been a very different race. I think he would have won it. He had the pace in that car to win it. I think there's a big deficit between Hamilton and George Russell. We're starting to see it. Their consistency. Last week they were 42 points behind Ferrari and the constructors. It's 30 points this week. That in 2 races they could be the second best car. Clearly, with Red Bull having those issues, they're going to take penalties in the end of the year. Hamilton will win a race this year, and they'll be firmly in that second position fight. I think they're too far to fight for a world championship. But it's only going to be Max Verstappen in that Red Bull ahead of them because Sergio is now becoming another famous second driver to Max Verstappen.
Yes. Showed
some glimpses early on for a couple of races, thought he'd turn it around. Oh, no, Max goes on a tear again. So, yeah, good on Mercedes. Like, I'm cheering them on because they're the underdog now. Didn't want them to win when they're up top.
Yeah.
But
how very Australian of you.
But how good was it in the race last night? I was like... That safety car came out with 2 laps. I was just like, let them race. Let them race. Bring out a safety car. Lewis on fresh tyres. I was the irony of it. But I think Ted brought that up as well. But
yes.
Look, the race this weekend and the last few races we've had, there are things that are happening and you think it's going to play out a certain way, and then 2 laps later you go, oh no, this has all changed again. And I think the racing we've had this year is considerably better than our previous generation. We're getting consistency in good races, and it's actually really starting to excite me. Last night won't go down as an all-time race, but it is that is at times as good as F1 can get. Like playing out on track, 6 cars up. It was awesome. Loved it.
Yeah.
Second half of this season is going to be cracking.
Yes.
As will our podcast.
Yeah, true. Red Bull Porsche. We might as well start calling them now. 50% of Red Bull Racing, it seems, everything. Not just the power unit, but from what I understand anyway, this being reported, I don't think has been officially announced yet, but that's what is flying around the paddock. There's only a matter of time. The Volkswagen conversation has been going on for a very long time, hasn't it? Time and time again. Audi will be the next one to make their moves, it seems. But Porsche being involved in the sport's fantastic. Obviously, I think they're looking forward to the 2026 regulation changes where maybe some things will happen with the rest of that Volkswagen Auto group. But certainly for Red Bull, they'll be pretty happy with that, considering their power unit supplier will probably turn to be a Porsche logo on their Campy.
Oh, great move from Porsche. They're just going to get. They've basically got a Honda engine. There was a cracking engine that won them a world championship. Then for Honda to leave and it become a Red Bull powertrain, for then Red Bull to go, oh, we've got a cracking product here. We've got a world championship winning motor. Who wants to come in and buy it? Porsche, like, yes, deal me in.
Mark Webber.
I think it'll be great for F1. I think we will have. I think it's probably a bit detrimental to motorsport worldwide now. I'm thinking about World Endurance Championship, things like that. Porsche won't be actively racing. Yes, they do their Carrera Cups and Porsche Series all over the year because it's for racing cars, that's an entry-level racing car. And they're great at that. Those categories are good to watch at times and they're never the top. But it's clear now that Volkswagen Group will have a lot of, they'll be like Mercedes now and the Daimler Group. All of their IP and designing for the future and cars and technologies will come through F1. It won't come through places like your WEC. So I think there'll be some racing categories that suffer from that because Porsche will dedicate that. But I think it opens up for someone like Toyota to come back in the series.
Oh.
And then imagine Audi and Toyota coming into the series. Then you've got every genuine big car manufacturer on the world competing in F1, and I think that's what they're ultimately working for. I mean, Toyota had some crackingly fast cars back particularly in the mid 2000s.
Yep.
So look, I think it's a good move for the sport, but I think we'll see some of those other categories drop off a bit, which is a shame. But I think that will be what what's the current guy's name? The little short dude, Franz Tost, is it?
For where?
Who's the CEO now? Who took over from
At Porsche?
For F1. Who took over?
Oh, Stefano Domenicali.
Yeah, I think that'll.
Sorry,
that's what Stefano will be working to, and he'll be like, "Great, I've got these guys on board. How do we get Toyota, the next big manufacturer, back in the sport?"
Yeah. To be fair, I mean, just pick any kind of former Ferrari team principal, and that's who's in charge.
Well, Matteo Binotto won't escalate. He's in the bin at the moment. He's going to have to crawl out of that.
Freya.
He wants a job forever.
Freya, your thoughts on Red Bull and then just summing up the race as a whole?
I think the real winner for Red Bull this weekend was Hannah Schmitz, who is their race strategist. She was just phenomenal. She got everything right this weekend. They were due to go out on hards, but switched after listening to both drivers saying it was tricky enough getting temperature into the softs on the way to the grid and just completely changed it up. And I think it was a good example of going, the data can be telling you one thing, but you have to look at what's in front of you. And we've got two drivers saying, this is what it feels like. We need to change. And listening to that and responding to it and being adaptable under pressure. And that's not an easy thing to do, especially when everything in front of you is going to be telling you to do something else. And, that was absolutely the right move for them. So I think, Max is Max. He's an absolute weapon. Started in 11th, went to first. And yeah, sure, he was helped out by Ferrari stuffing their strategy, but still, he's such an incredible driver, even with a full 360, just showing us his incredible car control as well. Maybe a bit of help, I don't know, but it's just, he is kind of amazing to watch. He can be irritating at times, but at the same time, when you see the way he performs on days like today, you just go, yeah, you're an incredible driver. But then even with Perez, you go, he's also doing his best to be right where he should be most of the time. And I wouldn't mind betting that virtual safety car gave him some pretty nightmarish flashbacks for a moment and paid attention as to when he needed to be getting going again. But, he actually looked pretty comfortable in the car today, I think, in comparison to what he has done in a little while, which was good to see. And so, no, I think they'll come back after the break. Again, like everybody else, they're going to be just tired. It's been a big first half of the season. So he'll benefit from a break as much as the rest of them will. But I think, this weekend was such a team effort when you look at the Red Bulls' overall performance, which is actually pretty incredible. So I think it's, kudos claps to the whole team over at Red Bull.
Good. Thank you. Well done. A great saying by Campy again. Well, that's our team by team analysis. Kudo clappily done.
Can I just say something about Carlos quickly?
No.
Because did we talk about Ferrari? I don't think we
Yep.
did. This is why I hate Ferrari. Carlos in front, gets preference on the pit stop. And what do you know? Oh, the right rear doesn't go on properly. And after the pit stops, the positions are changed. I mean, this happens consistently with Ferrari. And that's why I can't stand them as an organisation, because Carlos there's no way he should come out behind Leclerc. I know Leclerc's a bit quicker, but that undercut, oh, geez, it's just frustrating. It's typical Ferrari BS we have to put up with as fans of this sport.
You're right. We didn't actually specifically talk about them in team by team.
I don't want to talk about it.
Well, we sort of covered them off early on, but absolutely. It's just a bit ridiculous. Even Leclerc was salty as is like his tyres don't work. Yeah, they really don't, and there's no surprise there whatsoever.
So he should be.
Yeah, absolutely right. I completely agree.
So he should be. And do you know what's funny is that with even Toto afterwards, he talks about the potential of Charles in a Ferrari in the same category as Max in a Red Bull. He can see that if you got this right for him, he would be such a threat to whether it's Max in a Hamilton in a Mercedes or Max in a Red Bull. You in a Ferrari, Charles Leclerc, are phenomenal, but your team are letting you down. And he didn't obviously say it in such words today, but he kind of going, the potential is there, but you're probably not going to win a world championship with Ferrari if they keep behaving with the way they do.
Yeah, it was exceptionally disappointing to see. Just Ferrari being Ferrari, I think, is the summary of that team for this weekend. And that is why they will not win a world championship anytime soon, because Michael Schumacher was the reason that they won a world championship, because he gripped that team up. He got good organisation. He got good communication going all the way up and down the grid. And who was one of his team principals at the time?
Brawn. Ross Brawn, yeah.
Ross Brawn. What else did he do? Won 2009 under his own name. I think my point is Ferrari really, there is a systemic issue in that team. Happened with Seb, happened with Felipe Massa, happened with Fernando Alonso, happened with Rubens Barrichello. It's happening now with Charles Leclerc.
To be fair.
No.
To be fair.
How dare you?
Ferrari haven't done this for the last 18 months. They haven't come out and been Ferrari, but we've seen it in the last, all year. I mean, reliability.
So actually in the last 18 months, six of those months of Ferrari being Ferrari.
The last 4 races, it's become apparent that Ferrari is starting to, panic at all the wrong times during a race.
Yes.
Which they haven't done seemingly. I can understand when things happen in the car, mechanical failures, it's out of their control sometimes, but they're just starting to show all the bad habits of the Ferrari of old and yesteryear.
Let me just finalise our team-by-team analysis with a quote from Jeremy Clarkson on Twitter. As abuse is no longer allowed when we speak about Formula One, I'm forced to say Ferrari strategists are brilliant. That's it. Let's talk now about our fantasy team league name competition. We've got some great ones here. Remember that at the end of the season, we're going to choose our favorite name and they will get a merch pack, or you will get a merch pack. You can join at the link in the description below. Mind-bogging stupid. As said a couple of times, not boggingly, bogging. Mind-bogging stupid. Byron H. Ferrari pit wall in the bin for good, Trent L. Hungary for a McLaren. There's lots. There's a big McLaren, so I assume it's Paul di Resta's version of McLaren to get out of the bin. David W. My 8-year-old would do a better job at Ferrari strategy. Gemma C. Posting my notice on Insta from now on. Samuel R. That's top tip for everyone, I think. Do a black, like this wall behind me with the stool that Campy and I are sitting on in black and white, and then do a very impassionate, good read of a teleprompter. Lawrence Stroll could learn something from Seb, honestly. Hungary Hippo, Kelly W. Hungary like the Toto Wolff for Merck's first win, Josh L. Very good. Are we back in 2021? Daniel B. Auf Wiedersehen und viel Glück, Sebastian, Daniel T. Everyone's in the bin, John B. Aldi Championship contenders, Matt J. Hang up my helmet and S. Vettel down, Nicholas H. Very good.
Yeah, good.
Danny Rick really is washed, Dylan C. Well, I mean, McLaren's not helping. Mattia in the Bonotto. Haley H. I actually really like that. It's very, very good.
Very good.
And Hungary for a DR podium. Love it. So many great names in there. You can go and look at yourself in the F1 Fantasy app.
Excellent.
The top 3 in the race. This is a little thing that I'm going to do now. First, well done, Baku. Catherine L. 246 points. Well done to you. Second, Isn't She Pretty, Jess G, 193 points. And third, Gotifi is Hungary, Jake B, and 184 points. And in good news, in the 5 of us,
Well,
I'm winning. Well, in this race at
I
least.
still don't have a
Because you're the
team.
only one
It's
who
listed in
does
there.
I
it.
don't have a team.
Tommy T
boss.
and I, for the Hungary Grand Prix, were tied in first. I put myself above him, though, because that's my prerogative. Munus and Campy were tied third in 109th, and Freya, you were fifth in 133rd. Lift.
Yeah, but my
Come on, mate.
names
What
are
you
better
doing
than
all the
yours.
way over
so
there? That's true, but you don't get to win any prizes.
I still,
Would Freya-
I still don't have a team.
Give me
so-
some-
Freya,
something.
you've got a team. Freya, please feel free to read out your team name and give a bit of an explanation as to why it's that.
Oh, my team name, I believe, was something along the lines of "I'm the Walrus Cuckoo Cachoo," which is because there is a giant walrus
Yes.
sinking boats and breaking hearts in Norway this summer. Go and Google it. It's the funniest thing you've ever seen.
Called
And
Freya.
I'm sure she's an absolute legend like
Oh.
me.
Yeah, well, just going to leave that well alone.
Take on that role in the podcast too.
Stop breaking boats on the podcast, Freya. Well, that's it for this race review. Thank you so much for listening and for watching. Freya, massive thank you to you. We're looking forward to
Yes.
your free practice Fridays coming up in a couple of weeks' time. Campy, we're looking forward to, well, we're looking into, I don't know what the next word is, to seeing what's in your corner. Send help in advance to that. And thank you to you for listening. As I said, we're going to be away for the next couple of weeks, but you can keep in touch on Discord.
Yep.
We'll be back on the 23rd of August for our Belgian GP preview in a nice shiny studio. Tommy T, Campy, and myself doing that.
Ooh.
It's gonna be a good rest of the year for Lakeside Drive. Strap in because there's a hell of a lot of content. Do you want more content? Well, that's what you get. That's it for now, though.
Yep.
We'll see you in a couple of weeks' time. Bye.
Ciao.
Au revoir.
Should I get a bigger stool?
Oh, is that why you're on a little stool?
I'll get a bigger stool.
Oh, that's a cute stool.
No, I'm not sure.
That's so cute. Where did you get that from?
How about you get on a short stool?
All right, I'll go on the short stool. Come here. Or just bring me, yeah. They have just the same height stool.
Hey, gotta make an effort, little things, all right? You would know all about that.
You also you're gonna find us a little oh, this is a short stool. You're gonna make us a neon sign.
No, I'll get one made.
Well, you know what I mean. You not specifically make one.
When you are all satisfied with your stool sizes, we can get on with
Oh, yeah, Freya wants to go.
I want to
Take that
go.
out of context.